Hello, welcome back to Oliver Ray Knits. This is episode 6. My name is Tracy and I'm a maker based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Knitting is my primary hobby. It's portable and I pretty much do it all the time when I'm not working, sleeping, or eating. I also do some other hobbies such as crochet, quilting, sewing, adult style house miniatures. I'm always trying new things. So today we're mainly going to be talking about knitting, but I do have a non-knitting project as well. So let's start with what I'm wearing. This is one of my most recent finished objects. I'm not going to be doing them in order of completion. And this is the Saturday Shrug, a pattern, a debut pattern by Jackie Rose of Caddy Jack's Knits. Two friends, Caitlin and Jackie, were originally both in Madison, Wisconsin, and they started a YouTube channel because they are obsessed and passionate about knitting and yarn. And Caitlin has since moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, but the YouTube channel continues. Occasionally they get to meet in person. Most recently they did a trip to Bainbridge Island off the coast of Washington and visited a store called Lamb and Kid there. They are extremely excited about Lamb and Kid, and I think a lot of us are equally excited about them. When they were visiting, they did a live episode and they introduced us to this new pattern. It is called the Saturday Shrug and it is made with bulky weight yarn. I use some leftover, actually not leftover, some repurposed yarn, Rowan Big Wool from a project that I talked about in a previous episode, my Calgary Flames inspired Cowichan cardigan. I found that the Rowan Big Wool did not have quite enough structure to give me the look I was going for in a Cowichan inspired cardigan. So I set it aside and thought I would eventually find another use for it. And yeah, when Jackie released the pattern, it is a free pattern on Ravelry. She just also released another pattern using super bulky weight yarn that maybe I'll make at a future time. I was a little bit on the fence about making this because I really didn't know if I'd ever actually even want to wear it, whether I was a shrug or cowl type person, but honestly, I wear it a lot. It keeps my shoulders and kind of feels a little bit like a hug. When I first bound off the stitching, I tried it on for my husband and he was a little questioning about whether it was actually a cowl or a skirt. And indeed, I just pulled it down around my middle and yeah, it could have been a skirt, a cute little 1x1 rib. But no, once I soaked the yarn and laid it out to dry, it really loosened and relaxed. And now it's just this really cozy hug. That's the best way I can describe it. I throw it on over my shoulders and then I still have my arms free to do my knitting or whatever else I'm working on. I think I will probably wear this to a Calgary Flames game, and I think I will make a second one out of more, well, let's say less Calgary Flames inspired yarn, or as my friend Loretta called it, Gryffindor inspired yarn. It was really fun. I did have a lot of ends to weave in because before I abandoned this yarn as my Cowichan sweater, I completed a whole back and a front and maybe a sleeve. So I had a lot of little bits and pieces of yarn that were knotted together. My friend Leanne, so lovely. She wove in about half of them and there's still lots more ends to weave in, which I may or may not ever do. I really love the idea of throwing this on over a jean jacket or a lighter weight jacket when I do go to games with my husband. And yeah, I definitely can see more of them. It's a very easy pattern, 1x1 rib, and you can do anything you want with it. I chose just to use as much yarn as I could, and I just knit until I ran out of yarn. And I think I used about 4 balls of the big wool in the red, and then the yellow and the white. I think I had 1 ball of each of them. And yeah, it was a really good way to eat up some of my stash, and I'm really happy with it. My second finished object is something that I finished early in January. It was a really quick knit. I think it took me about 3 days. This also took me about 3 days. And I like to do these projects as a palette cleanser between other projects. So this is my Yukon Campfire DK hat. And this is a pattern that I purchased with a kit at Edmonton Fiber Frolic in November. Brittany from Crux Fibres had a booth with, I'm sorry, I don't know the pattern designer's name, Treeline knits. They were selling the yarn, the pattern, and then you could also purchase a pom-pom separately. This is Arctic Fox, ethically sourced, and please don't yell at me for wearing an animal on my head. I think it's very soft and works perfectly with the hat. I was sold when I saw the buffalo plaid pattern. I just think it's so fun, and the red is just very classic. It was a very easy pattern. Both of these ladies are located in Edmonton. That is not true. Both of these ladies are in Whitehorse, Yukon territories, which is the territory just above the province of Alberta. And I really, really love this yarn. In fact, I really have plans to make a whole garment out of this yarn as soon as I acquire enough yarn stash weight. In my previous episode, or maybe episode 4, I talked about a yarn stash challenge that I am doing with my friend Leanne, the Nitty Stew. We are making a concerted effort to use yarn from our stash. We both have quite sizable stashes. I weighed all of my yarn and I had 18.5 kilos of yarn, including my scraps. There was 2.5 kilos of just leftovers from other projects. So I'm really endeavoring to use a lot of that stash. We are weighing all of our finished objects at the end of every quarter. So April 1st would be our first quarter. And we'll take 10% of whatever weight we use as cold, hard cash that we can use for future projects. I'm really looking forward to buying yarn in April because I have been really good at not buying anything, even though I'm sorely tempted, and we have enacted a clause called the Canadian Wool Clause that enables us to buy Canadian wool whenever we see fit. But I've been able to resist right now, so I can't wait to buy some more stuff in April. I'm hoping to complete between 200 and 300 grams of stash yarn into projects by the beginning of April, which should give me about $200 or $300 to spend on new projects, new yarn for new projects. So I'm a little bit excited about that. And yeah, we call the challenge Busting My Balls 2023. There's a hashtag, and I did check, and there are a few people that are posting to that hashtag. So it is very exciting. If you want to join along, we are not doing any prizes. It's not a real challenge. It's just something that we're doing as a friendly encouragement to go through stash. So this is my Yukon Campfire hat, and I'm going to take it off because it's a little bit warm today. And I'm going to show my third finished object. This is my Caroline shawl. This is a pattern by Bella at 100 Acre Wool. She is a designer based in Northern California. This does not do very good things for my color. It's such an amazing pattern. I actually stalked her Instagram waiting for the release date. I applied for a test knit, but I think she had a lot of people who also wanted to make this shawl. It is such an interesting pattern. It's absolutely massive, and I am not very good at wearing shawls. Some people can naturally just throw them on and they look really good. I am not one of those people, but it is another hug. I actually really, really love this. The yarn is Nutiden, and it is so multi-dimensional. The color, there's just so many different colors. There's kind of orange and gold and gray and probably some lighter natural colors. And there's even some, can't really find them right now, but there's even some pops of some bright yellow in here. I call this my New Year Gold shawl because I cast it on New Year's Day. And yeah, I quite love it. I haven't actually worn it. It's just really hanging out on my mannequin, but I will definitely be wearing it in the future. So that is my Caroline shawl. The last finished object that I have is what Freddy the Fox is wearing. I showed this off in episode 4. This is a pattern that I made from this book, Knitted Animal Friends. This and the body of the fox, the yarn that was used for that, was a gift from my darling mother-in-law. And yeah, I just, it was a really fun project. It didn't really take very long. It uses intarsia and some little bit of embroidery, mattress stitch. It's all kind of knit in the flat, and then you seam everything together and then stuff him full of batting. And yeah, he's got a cute little tail. When I showed him before, he was naked, and I have since made him these adorable overalls and a t-shirt. I was going to make him some sneakers, but I decided not to for now. This yarn is Retrosaria Mondim, and this is Brooklyn Tweed Peerie in 2 different colors, and they are all leftovers from my stash. When I finished this, I realized I had to up my game a little bit and use some heavier weight wool, because all told, this is only 45 grams of yarn and would only give me 45 cents. Or is that 4.50? I don't know. Math. So that is Freddy. He is no longer naked, and I just think he's so adorable. All right, so that is it for finished objects. Now I'm going to talk about a non-knitting project that I'm working on. I do so many different things. And one of the things that I tried doing about 5 or 6 years ago was something called English paper piecing. Do I have any of the pieces? I did. All right. So English paper piecing is kind of a hand stitching quilting technique where you take little pieces of paper. This is a cardstock, and you fold and baste pieces of fabric around them. So you use a little bit bigger fabric than the shape, and then you sew them all together and you make these little flowers. This is just something that I was working on when I was trying to keep my fingers busy between knitting projects. So really fun. I made one quilt for my daughter, and then I have made other little tiny quilts with them. And yeah, when I was tootling around on Instagram, I found something called the Winter Mystery Sewalong. And there are 2 makers. Their names are, let's see, we have Irina from Finland at Nordic Crafter, and Larissa is in Australia, and she is stitching notes. This is their 3rd mystery sew-along. The first project was a sewing folder, so it was really cute. I think like a linen almost book where you have pockets inside that you could put your stitching or knitting notions in, or maybe just, your small projects. Have everything compact in one spot with a little, I think it was a buttoned front, buttoned closure or something like that. And then the second one was a zippered pouch it had a zipper, and then it was quilted and just really cute. This is their 3rd one. And this is what I've done so far. So it's a 3-week challenge, and you start by cutting strips of fabric. I have a huge collection of quilting fabrics from other projects that I've worked on. So little bits and pieces. Each of these pieces I think was 4.5 by 1.5 inches. So you cut them all out, and then you sew them together and into strips, and then you attach it to this foam. This foam is iron-on adhesive, and then you quilt along each line. So yeah, starts with this. And then the second part is you made these tabs. You have a contrasting linen, and you sew these little tabs. So they're little, I don't know, I think maybe they're handles. I'm thinking I'm making a bin. It is a mystery project, so I really don't know exactly what I'm going to be making, but I think that's what it's going to be. Week 2 began at the beginning of this week, and you made front and back. So this is why I think it's some sort of bin or bag. And I think that this panel goes along like that somehow. You sew everything together. This is just a linen that I purchased at my local fabric store. You use more of the self-adhesive foam, quilt everything together in this diamond pattern. And then the next part of the project is to make hexagons. So again, this is English paper piecing. So you start with these pieces and then you take your little piece of fabric. So let's see, got one here. So you have your little piece of paper. So this is cardstock. That is just going to be printer paper. You fold the fabric around it. You can either use glue or special fabric glue or basting stitches just to keep the fabric in place. And then you go back in and you stitch them all together. So these hexagons are a little bit smaller than the ones I'm used to working with. And I think it's going to be so cute when it's finished. So this is my non-knitting project. I think that sometimes we need to give ourselves a different type of thing to work on just to push our brains a little bit. Or maybe that's just me. All right. So other works in progress. I have 4 other works in progress. I like to keep a number of things on the needles at one time, just because I do get a little bit bored, especially when I get to a point where I'm just doing straight stockinette stitch. And I like to, of course, go back and forth. So suddenly I'll have 4 things on the needles and then a few days go by and I will have everything off the needle. So then I can start the whole process again. So my first work in progress is this beautiful pullover. This is the Barren pullover by Woodland Knits. Liv is a knitwear designer, I believe, in Germany. And this is using Nutiden yarn. This is the Swedish wool from the company Honerocheir, which also produced this yarn. And I'm using 2 colors. I have them written down here. So the silver color, gray, beige, whatever you want to say. They're so hard to really pinpoint exactly what color each of these are because there's so many different fibers blended into one color. So this is called Wagenhem, this beigey right here. And then the main color is Brygd, B-R-Y. GD, and of course I'm probably not pronouncing them right. I think all told, when I'm finished this, I'll be using about 500 grams. I thought that I would be finished this last night, but the very last plate of yarn, of wool, they come in plates of approximately 500 grams each. I wound it all into 3 separate balls, and I took the biggest ball, and I thought I was going to be completely done this sleeve, and I do not know where I put the other 2 smaller balls. So I know that they're somewhere here in my craft room, but until I find them, I will not be able to finish this pullover. I'm going to have to do a deep search after this because it is somewhere. So such a great pattern. I was inspired by my friend Carmen at she and Jackie have the Knitting a Good Yarn YouTube channel, and yeah, I really like this. So hopefully I'll have that done very soon. It is very, very soft and light in weight. It's not lightweight. I wouldn't want to wear this in the summer, but it is going to be very warm and beautiful. The next work in progress I have is another knit collage cardigan. My very first episode, I was wearing this glorious pink cardigan called the Daisy cardigan by Knit Collage. It is a kit that I purchased along with this one from Knit Collage as part of their 2022 fall knit along. They do one in the spring and one in the fall. They have kits and exclusive patterns available during that time. I splurged and purchased 2 kits, and this is the second one. So this is a color work pattern, and it's called the Inner Beauty cardigan. So it's got a lot of really neat things going on here. So this stitch, the body, is a bubble stitch. It alternates, I think it's 12 rows in total, 6, and so you have these alternating bubbles. And then the body is inside out colorwork, stranded colorwork. And so this is the part that we usually see when we see our colorwork sweaters. But on this pattern, the inside becomes the outside, and it just really adds a really neat element to this sweater. It's very piecey looking, very bohemian style, and I think it's really cute. This is going to be a cropped sweater. So I'm actually finished knitting the body except for the ribbing. Then I go back and pick up the sleeves, long sleeves, and then I go back in and I finish the edges with, I don't know, I haven't got that far in the pattern yet. So this uses 5 different yarns. Black, which is kind of ridiculous why I would choose a black yarn when I have 2 dogs that shed all the time. So this contains a healthy amount of Scheepjeswol fur. It also has lots of sparkle. All of those little, see how that sparkle there? So pretty. This is called Spun Cloud. Then you also, as part of the kit, get a sampler set of 5 other types of yarn. So the first one is another yarn called Spun Cloud. It's just a different colorway. And the color isn't quite showing up right. This is kind of a raspberry color, again with the gold sparkle in it. Daisy chain, which is the same yarn I used for my daisy cardigan. This is called, what is it called? Castaway. And I just love this. It's kind of got a lot of these strands woven together, wound together, spun together, thick and thin yarn. This actually is my favorite. This is called Dreamland, and like the daisy chain, it's got lots of little bits woven into it. So some of the different fibers are just woven together like a barber pole, and then there's bits of lace and whatever this kind of fiber is. There's sequins. So there's tons of stuff going on. I don't really use very much, so I have quite a bit left over. The last yarn is this ribbon yarn. It's strips of fabric that they have torn and then stitched end to end. And it's this ribbon type yarn that I have right at the bottom. And I think that they use old saris, or maybe just, I don't know, they've sourced this fabric from places where they would be just disposing of yarn and, fabric, not yarn. And it's just really neat. All of these yarns are produced in India. And yeah, it's just a really neat project. So like my daisy chain cardigan, I don't know how often I'll be wearing it. Although I did wear my daisy chain cardigan yesterday. I was feeling really tired after a couple of busy shifts, and it just energized me. A lot of people complimented me on the cardigan, and yeah, I just always feel really good wearing it. So this is my Inner Beauty cardigan. I hope to have this done probably maybe by the weekend. See if I can find the yarn for that other pullover. Get that one done first. All right, my third work in progress is a shawl. I don't wear a lot of shawls, but I like to keep one on the needles all the time. This is my carry-on project. I take this with me to work. It kind of lives in my work backpack. And this is yarn that was repurposed from the 2022 Shawlography Mystery Knit-Along by Stephen West. The pattern this year, I think, was really divisive. You either really liked it or you really did not, and I was the latter. I didn't really like the way it was knitting up, although I've seen some beautiful, beautiful finished objects. Brittany at Crux Fibres, hers was probably the most beautiful one I've seen. You have to check out Brittany, by the way. She had an update on Tuesday the 14th of a new base, a new DK base that she has started with and dyed up in the most glorious colors. So please check her out as well. So this shawl is made with 2 different types of yarn. The first, the 2 different colors of gray, are Sea Change Fibres Ecola Fine Base, 85% merino and 15% silk. In the colorways Tarnished Silver, the dark gray, and Driftwood, the light gray. And then the pink is a yarn by Amelia and Philomene, Josephine base, 100% merino in Stay Home, bright pink. I call this the pink pop shawl because the pink really does pop against the grays. There's a lot to keep you engaged with this pattern. Every section is a different type of stitch. You do, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sections, and then you repeat, and it continues to grow. It's a crescent-shaped shawl. My favorite is the brioche. However, I did make a mistake and I reversed the colors. So I really, really love the way this one looks. And then I reversed the colors by mistake for this one, and I don't really love the way it turned out. My favorite part is on the back, so where it's the right way. But this is just something I do to keep my hands busy while I'm on my breaks at work, and I really didn't think it would matter in the whole scheme of things if I started over again. But yeah, it's really pretty. I think it's going to be really stunning just worn with my pale gray coat and maybe just shawl, just add a little bit of color. I love hot pink. It's probably my favorite color to work with. I love the energy of it. So that is a shawl. I didn't say the name of it. It's called the Wake and Wave Shawl. The designer is Carissa Browning. I cast this on just at the end of December on the 29th while I was waiting to be able to cast this one on New Year's. And yeah, I actually, even when I got home the night from work, I was still working on it because I was really enjoying just working on some of this is just stocking stitch. So I was just working back and forth, and it was really, really calming for me. So that is my Wake and Wave shawl. My last finished object is something that I started because I needed something a little bit more challenging. I finished the color work of my Barren sweater, and I was just doing a straight stockinette stitch in the round. And my mind started wandering, and I thought, okay, I need something else that's going to be a little bit more engaging, that will take me a little bit longer, and will get some yarn out of my stash. So I purchased this yarn from a store in Vancouver. It's called Armscote Manor. The store is called 3 Bags Full on Main Street in Vancouver. This yarn is a UK wool. It is Portland wool, which is one of the oldest known breeds in England. The patron is His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, who is now the King of England, and it's part of the campaign for wool. This is not a soft yarn, especially in this game. I hope that it will walk up a little bit nicer, but what I'm making is an all-over cable knit pullover. This is the Aurelia pattern by Sari Nordland, and it's quite an ingenious construction. So you start, it's top down. So this is the top. You start by casting on stitches for the back, raglan stitches, and the sleeves, and then you work back and forth for a number of rows, and then you cast on stitches for the front. So naturally the front comes down a little bit lower. It looks really complicated, but I am actually able to memorize and read my knitting fairly well. It is going to be becoming a little bit more complicated because I'm just about to, actually probably have a ways to go before I separate for the sleeves, but it's just such a fun pattern. It's got bobbles, which I don't know why, I just love bobbles. They're not too much for bobbling, but they're really fun to knit. She has really well explained instructions on how to make the bobbles, and I really enjoyed that technique. So this is something I'm going to be working on for a while. Hopefully I'll have it done by the end of March, and then I'll be able to use this as part of my project, my yarn challenge budget. Yeah, this is actually the third time I've used this yarn. The third time I've used this specific yarn because I've cast on 2 other projects that I wasn't happy with. One of them was a Kate Davis pattern for a pullover with just cabling along the front, but there were some details of it when I started getting into the knitting that I wasn't happy with. So I frogged that, I washed the yarn and set the yarn aside. The second time I tried to do a pattern called, what is it called? It's by Jared Flood, Brooklyn Tweed, and I think I messed up the cables in it, so I set it aside. I frogged and washed the yarn again. Third time, I hope, is the charm. I really, really, really want to finish this project. I don't know if I'll ever be able to wear it against my skin. It depends on how soft it is once I've washed it, but I think it will really look cute over like a collared shirt or a button down or something like that. But again, I don't think I'll ever be able to wear it against my skin because my skin is a little bit sensitive to some wools. Not a lot, but some. And this seems a bit scratchy. So that is my, what did I call it? Aurelia by Sari Nordland. Her patterns are beautiful. She has so many of them as well. All right, let's see if there's anything else. No, I think that is all for my works in progress. I do have some other plans. I really want to make a color work sweater. There's one pattern that a couple of friends are making as a friendship sweater. It's called Houndstooth sweater. And I'm thinking about making that, maybe in Brittany's wool, because she is one of the makers that is making that sweater right now, along with Loretta from Long Way Home. No, Knit My Way Home. I'm getting my makers mixed up. I also really want to make something with mohair. I have a few single skeins of mohair, and what my thought is, I also have some DK weight superwash yarn, and what I'd like to make is a very simple pullover sweater, raglan or something similar, and just use the DK weight yarn for the majority of the sweater, and then use just a single or double strand with the DK. I'm probably not going to explain this very well, but just highlight some color work along the yoke by adding a single or double strand of mohair to the DK yarn. Does that make sense? I'm still looking for some patterns. So if anybody has any suggestion for a DK weight pullover that uses about 800 meters. Anyway, uses not a lot of DK weight yarn. I'd like to hear it. I'm also going to be traveling soon, so I think I'm going to be casting on some socks or just trying to finish some other socks that I have cast on and abandoned for now. So those are my dream or future knitting plans. I also want to talk about something else. I started this podcast back in December and I'm loving it. My husband is really supportive. When I first told him I was starting this podcast, he said, oh, you know what? I just got a webcam, so why don't you use it and see if it will work? And he just gave me the webcam. So that was really, really nice. And he bought me a microphone and all sorts of accessories. So very supportive. He also asked me what happens if nobody watches my podcast. And I had an answer. I said, well, if nobody watches my podcast, well, first of all, I thought, well, no, somebody is going to watch my podcast, even if it's just my mother-in-law or my girlfriends. I figured if 5 people watch this and I inspired 1 or 2 people to pick up their needles, or if they were inspired to just try making something by watching how passionate I am about making, then I would be success. But I released a couple of episodes and then I started really looking at the numbers and thinking, oh, well, why isn't anybody watching mine? It's not true. People are watching, but you start comparing yourself to other people and you get in your head. So I had to really remind myself about why I started this. I started this channel because I work shift work. I don't often have time to see my friends. And I also just love to talk about knitting. So there's other people out there like me that maybe can't get out and socialize with their knitty friends. And maybe they just want to sit and grab a project and knit along with me. So I had to really remind myself about that. And I think that there is a little bit of a lesson there that if you are not the success that you think you are, maybe you need to remind yourself about what your definition of success is or redefine that success. And yeah, I'm still going to continue. I love this and having lots of fun. And who knows where this channel will go. If only a handful of people watch, I have to be okay with that, and I am okay with that. I did inspire at least one person to pick up knitting needles, and that person is my beloved mother-in-law, Bernice. I took some knitting needles and some yarn down with me when my husband and I visited about a week ago, and she had already learned how to knit way back when her children were small, but she had 3 small children and just no extra time to knit. So she abandoned the hobby, and she recently had a little extra time, so I thought I'd see how she did. What I found really interesting is that she retained muscle memory from when she learned how to knit long ago. And the reason why I think this is so interesting is because she had learned a cast on that I've never seen before. Her muscle memory was there, so when I tried to teach her my go-to longtail cast on, she was having some difficulty with it because she was trying to use this other type of cast on that she had originally learned. We were struggling with it a little bit, so I said, well, let's just take a step back. And I went back to my very first cast on that I ever learned, which is the knitted on cast on. I didn't know for many, many years that there were more than one type of cast on, and wow. So anyway, I taught her the knitted on cast on, and she just took to it and had all the stitches cast on for a very simple garter stitch hat, and kind of reintroduced her to the knit stitch. And the last I know, she had completed 5 full inches of the hat. It's a very simple pattern where you just go back and forth with garter stitch, and then you start, when you get to a certain point, you start doing your decreases, and then you sew one seam in the back, and it's very, very simple, very easy. So I think that she'll probably be done that very soon. I will put a picture of her knitting, and I think she looks so adorable. The other thing I want to talk about is perfect moments, and I am very lucky. I have a lot of perfect moments in my life, and sometimes I recognize them in the moment, and sometimes I don't recognize them until I am past them and reflecting on it at a later time. So a few of those moments I can think of off the top of my head are during my honeymoon. My husband and I were in Spain, and we had just a really simple dinner, really simple pasta on our terrace, and we were overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, and we had some wine, and it just was perfect. We also have done quite a few trips to New York, and each of those seems to have perfect moments in them, whether it was the two of us listening to music at a rum bar, or maybe just just perfect moments where everything comes together. My daughter and I have had those moments when we were hiking. We did an overnight hike, I don't know, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and first time for both of us. It was very grueling. My 25-pound pack seemed like it had to be well over 100 by the middle of the trip. We stayed in a tent overnight, and then we woke up early and hiked to the summit and watched the rather smoky sunrise that day. And by the time we made it down, it was very hard getting back down as well. It was just so tiring, but when we kind of rested a little bit, we were both very, very invigorated by that. And we'll never have that first overnight hike again, and it was a perfect moment. Recently, I was able to enjoy some perfect moments with my friend Leanne and Wendy. Leanne is the Nitty Stew, and Wendy is her sister and my friend. And we were down in my condo in Fernie, and we just sat and we knit and we ate and we laughed, we talked and knit some more and did a little bit exploring in the stores. And they were only there for 24 hours or so, but yeah, pretty perfect moments. I think when you can have those moments, just take them and use those memories to kind of propel you through times when they're not so perfect. So anyway, a couple of PSAs for you. So enjoy the perfect moments and realize what success truly means for you. So that is all I need to talk about today, or all I want to talk about. I really hope that you found some inspiration here and that you are enjoying your own making. Thank you so much for joining me today, and happy making. Goodbye.